Hello, everyone. I'm Stephen Evans, Executive Director of FotoFest, and welcome to another in our series of Creative Conversations Digital. We're coming to you today from all over the world, and we thank you for joining us. Before I get started with an introduction, I'd like to thank our supporters. Major funding for public life and its programs, of which this is one, is provided by the Texas Commission on the Arts. Program support is also provided by the Brown Foundation, Inc., the Houston Endowment, the National Endowment for the Arts, the City of Houston through the Houston Arts Alliance, the Wortham Foundation, Silver Street Studios, Sawyer Yards, Papa's Restaurants, Lovett Commercial, and generous donors to the FotoFest Annual Fund. Public Life, as you'll hear more about later, is our year-long program of public art in the Houston Arts District here in Houston, Texas. As a response to COVID, we wanted to give viewers the chance to experience photography in a safe environment and at their leisure. So this is, we're now in the third iteration of the project. And the artist that we'll be discussing today, Anton Gautama, was one of the first artists included in this project. Additional supporters of FotoFest include the Philip and Edith Leonian Foundation, the Powell Foundation, the WWW Foundation, the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation, Judith and Gamble Baldwin, Wendy Watrous and Frederick Baldwin, Katie and Michael A. Casey, David and Martha Moore, Nina and Michael Zilka, and the FotoFest Board of Directors. And I feel that I'm speaking for a community today in saying that we were all shocked by the unexpected and we feel premature death of Anton Gautama earlier this year. And he was an amazing person, an artist. He lived and worked in Surabaya, Indonesia. His work has been exhibited in museums, galleries, biennials, and festivals around the world, including FotoFest here in Houston, the Ballarat International Foto Biennial in Australia, Fest Photo of Brazil in Porto Alegre, the Oregon Center for the Photographic Arts in Portland, and the Goethe Institute in Jakarta, Indonesia, among many other venues. His work has been published by renowned platforms, including Lens Culture, National Geographic Travel, and PDN Magazine. And Gautama's own publications include Pabian Passage in 2016 and Home Sweet Home in 2017. In addition to his arts practice, Gautama was the director of a private photography gallery in Malang, and was the founder of Alphalink, a prominent overseas education consultancy with branches throughout Indonesia. I had the pleasure of meeting Anton a number of times at portfolio reviews and events, significantly in Houston, where I got to see some work that he eventually exhibited here at FotoFest in a couple of different iterations. And also at the Singapore International Photography Festival, which was a big supporter of Anton's work as well. So we thank them, and you know, we really miss Anton, and we're looking forward to discussing the work today. And to that end, we've got Max Fields, FotoFest Associate Curator, that will lead a discussion with Paula Tognarelli of the Griffin Museum and Celina Lunsford of the Foto Forum Frankfurt. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to say about Anton, his work, and working with him. So I will turn it over to them now. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Before we begin the formal presentation with Celina and Paula, I'm going to do a brief introduction of our two speakers, our two guest speakers today. We're really thankful that they could join us, and we're really thankful that you could be here today as well, because this is it's an important thing to share with the world Anton's work. And we hope that following this program that you'll share the documentation, which will live on YouTube, on FotoFest YouTube channel, with your friends and colleagues, so that they can learn more about Anton's work. Celina Lunsford is a curator and writer on photography based in Frankfurt and Maine. Throughout her career, she has curated and lectured in Asia, Europe, and the USA, covering historical and contemporary aspects of photography. As the artistic director of Fotografie Forum Frankfurt, founded in 1984, she is responsible for the exhibitions program. She has written and edited numerous books on international photography, and she is a guest lecturer for Philipps Universität, Marburg. As a guest curator, she has worked for major international photography festivals, and she is a leading expert on the American photographer Imogene Cunningham. Paula Tognarelli is the executive director and curator of the Griffin Museum of Photography. The Griffin Museum of Photography, located in Winchester outside of Boston, Massachusetts, is a nonprofit photography museum whose mission is to promote an appreciation of photographic art and a broader understanding of its visual, emotional, and social impact. The museum houses 3 galleries and maintains 4 satellite gallery spaces. Ms. Tognarelli is responsible for producing over 54 exhibitions a year at the Griffin and its surrounding satellites. She holds an MS in Arts Administration from Boston University, from Regis College, and is a graduate of New England School of Photography and a candidate for a master's in education at Lesley University. And my name is Max Fields. I'm the Associate Curator and Director of Publishing at FotoFest. And I want to take this time to welcome Celina and Paula Tognarelli. Please join us. Hello.
Hey, Max. Hey, Paula. She's coming soon.
Yes. I can't start my video. Oh, there I
You
go.
are great.
Of course,
When
we
you're talking to a tree all night.
It's Zoom.
And here we are. Well, thank you both again for taking so much time, to prepare for this and to speak with our audience today. Folks might not know this, but we've been in conversation for a couple of months planning this. And the minute we heard the news that Anton had passed, we got in touch with 2 curators who had worked with Anton so that we can have this conversation today. So yeah, just once again, really want to thank you so much for joining us. It's really appreciated, not just by FotoFest, but I'm sure by our audience as well. To start this conversation, I thought we would first describe our relationships with Anton Gautama. And perhaps I can ask if you could tell me about when or where you learned about Anton and his work. And, a follow-up question is, what drew you to his practice?
So shall I go? Who goes first? Whatever.
You probably have a more rich relationship with him. So let me go first.
Oh,
Smart.
Okay, so I met Anton at FotoFest last year. I was in session 1 right before the pandemic let loose. And I really was attracted to the work, probably because how he led me through the work and how he talked about it. He was really colorful in his language and very articulate. And what impressed me was his keen sense of seeing. He had a truly artful eye. As you waited to get into the this forum, that one image is a true representation of that. His sequences were prepared well. That attracted my attention, and I also liked the fact that he was open to give and take. At the review table, that isn't always my experience. And little did I know that the upcoming year would have surprises. And I did encourage him to send me a PDF as soon as he got back from FotoFest, and he promptly did at my return. he was very serious about this process. And then the pandemic struck, and we all know that story, and that live programming eroded, and we had to pivot to virtual engagement with both our programs and our exhibition. So Anton went up on our virtual galleries immediately in May of that year.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Great.
Celina?
I met Anton in 2015 here in Frankfurt. That year I had curated an exhibition called Beyond Transisi with Contemporary Indonesian Photography. Anton was not part of that show, but he did come to Frankfurt to see that show with his new publisher, Lans Bramantio, who is from After Hours Books. So this was, it was really very emotional meeting. You know, you have an exhibition up of contemporary Indonesian photographers, and you have a photographer from Indonesia showing up at your doorstep, giving you their book, and he's not in your exhibition. But I did not meet him when I was there researching, and the book was fresh. He was so kind, such a thoughtful person. The book was interesting because it did deal, you could tell immediately he had an amazing sense of color and emotional attachment, but also a thirst to show the diversity about Surabaya, about Indonesia. Diversity in Indonesia has always been his main theme. And so that's when I first met him. I mean, if you want to go on about the project or, but the first project that I ended up doing with him, he really loved the show and asked me and Lans also if I would think about exhibiting his work and also putting together his new book project. I had to say immediately, exhibiting right now after I've done an Indonesian show doesn't look so promising for the next couple of years because our program is planned pretty much far in advance. But I was thrilled to have the chance to get to know his work, Home Sweet Home, and start helping him develop that for an international audience.
I like that you both reiterated Stephen's sentiment of how kind Anton was, and that was my first impression of Anton as well. I met Anton through FotoFest. I had just started my role as the associate curator and was working towards the 2020 biennial with Stephen, and I had learned about, we had just retitled this exhibition that took highlights of some of the best portfolios that were seen from the 2018 FotoFest Biennial's meeting place portfolio review event. And I was delighted to learn about Anton's work through that program. And because I actually never had the opportunity to work through a portfolio review with Anton. Instead, it was really rapid fire, really quick, learning about his work through really wonderful email exchanges and video conference calls, and speaking directly with the artist, who was incredibly generous, sharing images, and was also really excited about this project. He was a big fan of the FotoFest portfolio review, especially since he had made so many connections here and had so much, to look forward to in the next couple of years following the 2018 biennial. And if you look at Anton's creative output between 2018 and 2020, it ramped up. Really amazing. The amount of projects that he was working on in terms of books and documentary projects that he was making and publishing on online on various news sites. Maybe we can talk a little bit about how those projects with Anton, those very first projects with Anton, emerged. And I think some context for the audience is key. in this regard. So his most well-known series are Pavian Passage and Home Sweet Home, and all of us have worked with Anton on Home Sweet Home, and those works deal with issues of movement, migration, and migrant experiences through the lens of colonial and imperial histories. I'm curious to ask, what did you see in Anton's work that was unique about his approach to dealing with such difficult topics?
Well, I guess Anton was interested in the social aspects, but Anton was a lover of beautiful things. Anton loved high quality. He loved all the types of amazing artistic traditional approaches that are from Indonesia, from the different areas of Indonesia. He wasn't only interested in photography. I mean, you had mentioned he also was very interested in traditional dance, in batik. And so I think particularly this work of Home Sweet Home, it's about the mixed Chinese immigrant communities in Surabaya and in Makassar, but it's his connection to learn about people through their home. But even though many of the homes, I mean, it's different ranges from people that are poverty to extremely wealthy, he had an eye for an arrangement of sometimes the confusion, something to make these places dynamic. A personal home. I mean, first of all, who wants to let, some of these people were people he knew, but a lot of them were not. Some of them were family or friends, but still, who wants to have the interior of their home photographed? That's very few people. So he had to have an amazing sensibility of connection to people to be allowed in.
I
echo a lot of what Celina is talking about. As I mentioned, our collaboration was a virtual exhibition, and we also engaged our audience with our blog with his work. But I had planned to include Anton in an exhibition that takes place in the museum this coming year, all about being at home. And unfortunately, I never got around to asking him to participate in that opportunity, as I was constantly putting other priorities. And then Max is the one who told me about Anton's passing. I've always been fascinated with how people inhabit the earth, where they settle, with what do they surround themselves, and what do photographs tell us about the inhabitants? And I saw Anton in this exhibition that I'm having soon in October. He would have offered a more diverse view than some of the photographers from the United States. I was so impressed with his sensitivity of how he framed each person's place of residence. He captured the richness of the place. And even in the homes that were less elegant or extravagant, he really saw the beauty of the home in the color that he used and played with. And he brought out the beauty in all of the objects. As a matter of fact, sometimes it took me time to actually notice that they were more worn. It was probably only after I digested the design and the color of the piece. And I think that takes talent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now that we've talked about the work, it's time to show it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna, while I'm talking, I'm just gonna scroll through some of these images from Home Sweet Home. But you know, I found that Anton's approach to photographing, to documenting these homes was incredibly sensitive and incredibly smart. You know, he talked about the sort of uncomfortability of some of the folks that he approached to photograph this, and he talked about establishing relationships so that he could earn their trust, make these photographs that are, you know, absolutely, yeah, you know, they're exposing, they're vulnerable images of people's lives, their experiences living at home, but also working at home, at dealing with issues of cultural signifiers, you know, especially he's documenting in this series, you know, an experience of a mixed identity based on nationality, a Chinese nationality and an Indonesian nationalities coming together. So there's a mixture of tradition and, you know, contemporary social, cultural artifacts that, you know, reflect, you know, how one processes their personal, their spiritual lives. And we presented, you know, it's interesting that you were talking about presenting this exhibition or presenting this work in the context of an exhibition about a home, because the first exhibition that FotoFest presented, or wherein FotoFest presented Anton's work, was 10 by 10. So this was a group show that was really focused on just sharing the work of portfolio review artists. But over the past year, FotoFest has been organizing public art exhibitions, and they're themed exhibitions, they're group exhibitions that showcases 4 artworks as giant banners located in Art District Houston, where everybody can see them by car, foot, or bicycle. And one of the exhibitions, the second in the project, was called Home and the People Who Lived There. And the idea was to bring together artists who work, who are not only documenting home, but also thinking about what a home means, right? Which is exactly, you know, exactly what Anton was interested in. He was not only interested in home as a space, but also as a community. And some of these are images that that were not in our exhibitions, including this one, because the body of work is very expansive.
Maybe can you go back to the other image? I mean, that was a good example of Anton was working with the Phase 1 camera and also like a digital camera in producing this work. The quality of the images and what can be done with them as prints is spectacular. When I made the edit with him, or helped him make the edit for Home Sweet Home, he sent me, you know, all of his files from the different places. I mean, we must have started with about over 300-400 images. And I'm still a little bit old school when I said, just send me all the JPEGs, and I just printed them all out, of course, and put them on the table. And we would have, we worked, as with that big Indonesian show that I put together, it was in 2014, I basically organized that over WhatsApp. And with Anton too, we organized and reviewed things over WhatsApp, and through me taking photographs of all the pictures on the floor and saying, this is, these I think are interesting or not. But this one is a good example of the double exposures. He had a lot more of the double exposures. So if you look in the center of this image, you see that there's actually, maybe there's a person that you see the back, you see a double exposure. So a few of the images in the book, and this will be a nice thing is that you occasionally see these sort of ghostly figures going through the images. And we were really specific about not having too much of that. And I really wish Anton was here, and maybe even if there's anyone, the Indonesians that are listening, some of the really more specific things about the houses and about, for example, the images where the cooking space and water, traditionally, the water has to be in a different area than the cooking space or the fire space. There's a lot of cultural differences in some of the houses. And the diversity. I'm sorry about going on, but this is the great thing about these images and about Indonesia. I mean, you can look at one of these images and you see 5 different cultures. You can tell through the floor that, you know, we have the influence of the European floors from the colonial days. You have the different types of furniture. You have the glow of the temple, the candles that are being used for these small temple-like spaces. It's every image is just impacted with actually so many different traces of culture.
Absolutely. And one of the things that was really important when I was learning about this project was Anton's emphasis on a lack of like a judgment, and said it's essentially like the way you're reading this photograph, kind of picking up on the various cultural signifiers, isn't so much a commentary on is globalization, you know, destroying culture, but really like how do those complexities work in tandem with one another to create, you know, a picture of the world as we've adapted to it, right? But yeah, it's absolutely interesting to think about not exactly the colonial pattern on the floor, whereas you have Chinese and Indonesian artifacts and collectibles or tchotchkes, and then also images of branded items that are just speak to a global economy and social world, right? Like here in the bottom left corner, GT tires, you know. Mm-hmm. And then there's images like this, which I really love, that are just so minimal and just like draw your eye in just through the sheer brilliance of color.
I know that this is a bed. I remember asking Anton and talking about these pillows. He said, this is the bed of an older woman. The older women in Indonesia use these type of pillows. That was so funny.
And then here, another example. I put these 2 images together because of
I love this one so much. Yeah.
Just gorgeous.
Just the curious reflection for me for the longest time when I first saw this, just these popping colors, and then this sort of fake papered over chimney and the window. Of course, you're not sure about. It's the reflection in the window, how that just picks up the floor, this fractured space, but within his very clear frame.
Yeah, it's absolutely like it's collage-like in its assemblage. Mm-hmm.
And it's natural. It's a natural setting.
Yeah.
He's not rearranging anything. So the inhabitants, they take what they have and make it beautiful and livable. And it's like that table with the aqua basket. Mm. As you talk about a collage, that's exactly what it looks like to me.
Yeah,
that's right. So I think we should talk about this book. Celina, can you talk about the book that's right behind you on the shelf?
Yeah, I don't know if this is, when Anton did the Home Sweet Home, he did want to do a special edition. And it was funny today when I was kind of going back through my notes. I went back through my Facebook and between Anton and Lance like 5 years ago, or, when we were putting this together, and all the different versions of the cover, the plain cover of the Home Sweet Home that we had, and the different versions of this special edition. And I'd completely forgotten about that, the different colors, and I'm so glad that you showed that image before, and looking at this because of this, this brilliant sort of aquamarine color, which of course reflects water, but it also has that aquamarine color in the colonial houses, reflects the patina of the, what's the metal? Is it bronze? I'm sorry.
Copper.
Thank you. That will turn green, the Paris green. So, I mean, it's a mixture of the nature, the natural colors, the sky, the waters, but also it has that connection to the green from another time. So it is a beautiful canvas. This is an embroidered surface. The edition, I believe, is 25. Please excuse my quick iPhone pictures from 2 days ago. It's not giving it complete justice, but you open it up and there is a print, this beautiful print with that fantastic floor and that armoire that I love, and Jesus looking into the wherever, with, of course, a signed edition of the book. Yeah.
Yeah, and this book is available online at afterhoursbooks.com. That's where you can find this. I put the link at the bottom right.
Excellent.
So
Good.
that you can find that. And then,
Celina, was the cover embroidered by hand or machined? Do you know?
I'm gonna grab it right now, and oh my God. I don't know. Lance would be able to tell you. I'm not, it's so perfect, but that doesn't mean anything,
Right.
And I don't, if I'm opening it up, it says, exclusively produced set includes a copy of the book, and the print is on Hahnemühle. So just the same old regular photo jargon, but not the, but it's beautiful. Very happy to have one.
Wow.
it's really beautiful. Before moving on to other images, and moving on to other aspects of Anton's practice, I wanted to ask you, Paula, about your experience of working with Anton at the Griffin on the Home Sweet Home exhibition in particular. If you could talk about, what your goals were, not only for Anton, but also for your audience, what you were thinking about in terms of, how this work would play to your audience.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wish I could say more about the experience, and I certainly have such regrets now. I put off to tomorrow what I should have done earlier, and it's certainly a life lesson for me. We learn those things in life, but I'm glad to witness Celina's rich experience with Anton. I'm glad to have exposed this work to our audience, especially in these times where empathy is so needed, and I believe Anton walked that walk. His efforts to engage people, to look deeper into themselves and into their surroundings, and also to the roots of family, and to know where we come. I think it's a very valuable lesson. And I also think Anton is giving us probably the most valuable gift anybody can give us. Is he's showing us how to see and how to look at the world. And even more than that, he's offered us the keys to the secrets of life, which are pay attention. That's what I got out of his work and himself.
I forgot to share these images. I have 4 images, just quick snapshots from the installation so people can get a sense of how these are presented, how they work together. the photo book is incredible. And if that's a way to see it, absolutely do it. But we actually followed in line with a sort of photo book presentation, one image after the other.
How involved was he because I know he was clear about his sequence. I strayed a little bit, but was he that way with you as well?
You know, the way we worked was essentially Anton sent us a massive list of images in the most professional package you can imagine, with all of the captions put together and, you know, PDFs of things that he had done. And it was really, he made it very easy for us. And then we had a conversation, a back and forth about which images should be included, because in the 10 by 10 exhibition, we only include 10 works from each artist who is participating. And yeah, he was incredibly generous with us when we were determining which images we would present in the exhibition. And I don't remember a time where, I mean, there's no such thing as a contentious conversation with Anton Gautama. It was always very generous. So if there was any back and forth about the placement of a single image or the redundancy of an image over another, I can only remember it in good spirits as being something that was, oh, Anton's pointing this out and we should follow the artist's advice, which is, you know, the nature of a good collaboration between a curator and a contemporary artist.
Yeah.
And if I could interject, if I could interject, I had I had an impromptu review with Anton in 2018 because I don't typically have time to sit at a reviewer table for the whole of the meeting place. I can come in for a few hours on a particular day, and Anton was quick to grab the opportunity to sit with me and show me an edit of Home Sweet Home. And in that conversation, which, like yours, Paula and Celina, he was so incredibly generous and articulate in explaining his work. He showed me an edit that really reinforced the idea of home being a space of not only domestic activity, but also commercial activity in Indonesia. And so when we work with a curator and an artist for that 10 by 10 exhibition, FotoFest typically makes the selection. And so Max and I worked on that together, and that's kind of the focus that we took, and Anton was very happy with it. So
I just want to say that I read in the chat, Lance Bramantio is also joining us, and about the book right here, it is hand embroidered, and there are different versions of hand embroidering, different colors.
Oh, need one of each.
I guess what I want to emphasize about Anton is that he came to photography later in life. I mean, he had another profession, and really, when I met him, I think he'd just been photographing about 7 years. I mean, he said, yeah, I started with the iPhone, and this is where I am today. And I was like, okay, which is fantastic. I mean, we're used to many of our second career people doing that. It was very much about the colors, about the passion, about the beauty, about the history, about the tradition. But the longer I got to know him, it is also very biographical, which is something that I, as a curator, that's the most important thing. It's how you can be unique in your work. It's how you can really communicate something new, is staying to your own biography. And I think Anton also had some different personal issues, maybe with depression, and photography, let's say, saved his life. He found through engagement on the street with people, and also in these homes, he had discovered another house, which was him very, and as part of the last couple of years, he kept talking about his trilogy, and the trilogy was this other work, which I had mentioned to you, where he had discovered a house in the area of the Pavian Passage. And it was a house actually where Chinese immigrants had to, they hid in the early 60s when there was a lot of unrest going on against within the Chinese and indigenous communities. And he came back to that house. So there's 3 images here on the screen, the first 2 and the bottom left from that house. And he was still really working on this. And this was actually his, goal to be able to, this is his 3rd book. I didn't want to, I saw the times kind of getting by, Max. I hope you don't mind,
No,
mind me jumping to this, because another place, in a way, it has the connection to Pavian Passage, because it's people really that he doesn't know. He's not being able to spend a lot of time there, but he did go back. He photographed it. He was also between photographing this house and the name of the series, Dancing in the Rain is called the name of the series. He always has these really uplifting names to his projects. And in between the first time visiting this and going back and photographing it, he had done some workshops with Seven, with Ed Cashy. And I think Ed also, like I had helped him through the project of Home Sweet Home. Ed was really quite passionate about working on this. I was able to reach out to Ed a couple of days ago. He didn't know about Anton's death yet. So, but here again, it's there's another darkness, another story to tell, but it's we still see the mixture of cultures, and also this house that's, it's an old colonial house, that the house is like 200 or 300 years old. Mm-hmm. And how a lot of the people that live there today are even other immigrants, and there's a big Christian community that lives in this house. It's, it's filled with all this sorrow and hope, mm-hmm. which is something that interested him quite a bit.
And could you talk a bit about this image?
That is from a completely different project. It's not from Dancing in the Rain. It's the Tibetan city of Larongar, which is, I think, pretty not so easy to get to and to photograph these days. And Anton showed me a couple of prints of that for the first time in 2018 at the FotoFest. I actually told him about the FotoFest. He didn't know at all but what it was. And so he brought some of those images along. And that's just one of really some amazing, again, color first of all.
We don't have that series, but you can find on the Tokyo Photo Awards website, you can see a selection.
Okay, great. Yeah.
This is what I
yeah, these are more documentary. This one of purely more, but that's a fantastic image of where the cemetery is. Yeah.
So if you visit this link, I'll put this link in the chat so that people
that's great. Yeah.
Can check this out. Well, thank you both again. We are at 12:45, which means for our creative conversations, this is the moment where we open the room to questions from our audience and attending guests. If you have a question, you can, for either of our guests, any of our speakers, please enter it into the chat if you're watching on Zoom, or if you're watching on YouTube, please leave your comment in the comments box below the YouTube video, and we will relay those questions to our guests. Okay. Well, while we're waiting for some audience members' questions, here's a big question that I'm going to throw out to both of you. I'll start with Paula. Mm-hmm. What are your hopes for Anton's work now?
I'd like to fulfill my dream of showing his work. I I know for the October show, it's not something that I could do. And having lived through a pandemic, I'm very cost conscious. But I'd like to talk to my my collaborators in the United States, photo organizations like ours, that if I could get the work here, we could travel it across the country to be able to show it. And I think what we can show our audiences is something diverse. I'm certainly not an expert like Celina is on the Indonesian culture or even the Chinese culture, but it gives you the impetus to want to go find more about the unknown or the unfamiliar. And I think I'm not alone in that these days. So I'm going to work on that.
What about you, Celina? What are your hopes for Anton's work?
Well, Paul, I think was going a little overboard by calling me a super specialist, but
I
no, that's fine. But okay, I mean, I have done a lot of different projects internationally, and for me, I think Anton's greatest wish is that somehow, some way, that this third book, the trilogy, gets the proper edit. I mean, I don't think it's been edited completely yet, and that we find that there are authors that are to be found. I mean, maybe even Indonesian authors, other Indonesian authors, I think could be interesting. So, I mean, that's what I really wish. I mean, I haven't exhibited his work yet, but I'm sure I will down the line somewhere. As we all know, through COVID, all of our projects, all of our programs have been pushed back 2 and 3 years. It's kind of crazy. So for me, let's somehow internationally have a force together to get Anton's trilogy finished.
Brilliant. If you check the chat, if anybody's watching, checking the chat on Zoom, you'll see that Christopher Rauschenberg sent a link of the exhibition of Anton's artist talk when he showed at Blue Sky Gallery in 2019. And then Linda Hirsch has a question for you, Paula, which I think this should be exciting, is would you share info on costs when you have a sense of touring an exhibition? So I think someone's holding you to your word.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way, Linda. It'll cost more than what I get standing on the Rotary selling pencils. Well, shipping alone and the whole process of taking work from international artists, it's beyond me. And it takes an exporter to do it, and that costs money. So we would have to figure that into it. But once it's here, once it's framed, it's all in our control.
Linda also had an interesting question. She's interested in the psychological benefits and agency of photography to the photographer, to the subjects, and to the viewers, which I think is it's absolutely makes sense to see that in this work. How do you think about those terms in relation to Anton's work, the agency of photography, for all of those who are involved?
Well, I don't like using the word therapy so much. I mean, I know way back a long time ago when I first started doing portfolio reviews, and sometimes the people's work you were seeing, you really thought, okay, this is just therapy for them, and it's fine that they're doing it, but they're not going to go on and be any great photographer, so I don't like using that word as much as that. It's so important, as we know today, to relearn concentration through our digital age, through our bombarding age of being constantly interrupted in any, and it's happened so fast, and definitely contemplating photographs or contemplating seeing and trying to look at things with new perspective and have a new eye for new perspective. I mean, that is a root of hope.
Mhm.
And that always changes you for the better, I think.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at work in a contextually way, by putting yourself into the shoes of the photographer or the artist, and looking for similarities in your own life. That and alone is could be considered psychological. What we're drawn to, are we drawn to something because it hits a nerve, because it reminds us of something in our past? I think that's how I look at work, but I also look in all the corners, and to be able to walk in people's shoes is something we all need to do these days.
Absolutely. And I think that finding a relationship between your own life and your own culture and your own social world, through the lens of this work was a huge goal of Anton's. It's obvious when you think about where he showed. He was, very adamant on showing his work all around the globe, so that people, outside of Indonesia got an understanding of what his life was like, what others' lives were like, those people who lived around him. So we, from Ballarat to Frankfurt to Massachusetts to Texas, all different cultural experiences from literally opposite ends of the earth, have an opportunity to engage with this work. And one more very pragmatic question from Linda Hirsch: are his files available for printing here? I can say, Linda, we printed Anton's photos in Texas. So I would assume if you're putting an exhibition, that would be something to discuss. That's probably a possibility.
Does somebody manage, does he have a family that manages his business, or that you'd have to get permission from?
I think it's also fresh right now. I mean, definitely he had a close partner and the publisher. So, and he does have family. I mean, several of the pictures in the book are also from families. So I think it's so fresh, so shocking to them that it's something that will be, planned and decided in the future.
Right.
But it's a good question, and hopefully some of those people are listening and they'll let us know.
Well, if no one else has, that's the question. The Vero group asks, who handles the estate? That's what we're working on. I think that's what we're working on finding out. And as Celina mentioned, all of this really just happened out of nowhere recently. But if there's no further questions, I think we will end it there. I just want to thank our guests, Celina Lunsford and Paula Tognarelli, for joining us today to have this conversation. This conversation will be archived and available for future watching on FotoFest YouTube channel. You can also visit photofest.org or the Griffin Museum website, or I'm sorry, Celina, I'm butchering the triple F.
Yeah, you're not the first. Fotografie Forum Frankfurt, FFF.
Yes,
oh my God.
Don't worry about it.
If you have a slight speech impediment, it really trips you up there. But I think you should visit all of these institutions' websites and learn as much as you can about Anton's work. Preparing for this program, and learning more through Celina and conversations with Paula. I got to learn more about Anton that I didn't even know, especially these more recent projects and this third book project. And there's information out there.
Well, I'd like to reiterate Max's thank you to you both, Celina and Paula. It was a great conversation and a good homage to a wonderful, caring, kind, highly intelligent and observant individual that we were all lucky enough to engage with in one way or another. And thank you, Max, too, for you guiding the conversation and your incisive questions. So
Been wonderful.
appreciate it.
Thank you all very, very much. And if Anton were here, he'd throw a Snoopy on the window because he was the biggest Snoopy fan I ever knew. And yeah, so I just wanted to say that.
I
True.
trust him then. I don't trust people that don't like Snoopy.
Me either.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, cheers.